Hi, Misty. Thank you so much for coming on the Feel Good Social podcast. I'm so excited to bring you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Yes, and I did already introduce you just a little bit in the intro, but I'd love to hear from you. Who are you? What do you do? Who do you serve?
Yes, my name is Misty Jane. I was in the hair industry for 20 plus years. Then I turned money coach in 2020, like the rest of the world, into this digital space. And I'm a podcast host. I host the Starting Messy podcast, and I help people get their financial shit together and start things messy. I'm in a little bit of a pivot, so I'm excited about this conversation. I help people find clarity in a lot of aspects of their life that feel really hard and really stressful. I served the hair industry for a really long time. I'm still serving them, but I'm starting to branch out to women entrepreneurs in general. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, and I love that. I'm definitely needing some tips for getting my own financial shit together, so this is going to be great. But before we dive into all of the tips and all that jazz, I always like to kind of kick off the conversations by asking, how did you get started doing what you're doing now? What has that journey looked like for you?
Oh my gosh. So I have started so many things. So we're going to just start with the money empowerment coaching. I was in the hair industry. I was pretty far in, I think 17, 18 years in. I was out on my own. I owned my own little suite. And I knew that I wanted to help other stylists. I knew that I had information and I had something that I could impact other people, but I wasn't very clear what that was going to look like. I had a friend, well, she was an educator that I was very nervous to reach out to, who was looking for a hair model. I reached out in the DMs, very scared, very like, oh my God, she's going to hate me, like all the imposter syndrome, right? Saying, hey, I'm the perfect candidate for this. Take me. So she took me. We started having a conversation. And I told her about my money story. So I'm going to keep this very short. Basically, I had these limiting beliefs around being a hairstylist, seeing family that was always in debt. My husband and I had just had a baby. And we found ourselves in $48,000 worth of debt. We didn't really realize that we had that much, and we had bigger dreams for ourselves. And what ended up happening is we really dove into learning money management, learning like the basics of financial literacy, and we got ourselves out of the $48,000 in debt within 2 years. And there was this neighborhood growing up that we always used to drive around, and we always would say, we can never live here because we didn't go to college. We can never live here because, you're a blue collar worker and I'm a hairstylist. Well, when we paid off our debt, 8 months later, we bought a house in that neighborhood. I'm sitting in the house now. So I was telling this story to my educator slash hairstylist, now friend. And a month later, she calls me and she said, I want you to come to my salon. She owned a salon. I want you to come to my salon. I want you to teach a class. And I was like, what? I've never taught a class. She's like, your story was so inspiring. I just want you to just come and tell your story. You can sell tickets, like just come and tell your story. So I did. I sold the tickets for like $55. It sold out. There was 25 stylists there. And it was that day that I realized that there was a hole in the industry, personal finance, because hairstylists can make a lot of money, but a lot of them don't know what to do with it when they get home. And the basis for financial literacy is not taught. So when 2020 hit, I sped up my 5-year plan of becoming a coach and educator, and I just went all in. I completely left my clientele, my 17, 18 years of clientele. I broke up with all of them. I went all in on coaching. It was one of the scariest things I've ever done. And here I am now in 2024, still talking about the same thing, realizing that it's not just for hairstylists, because personal finance isn't taught to anybody unless you seek out the information. And if you're not willing to listen to Dave Ramsey shaming you, then I'm your girl. So that's basically a very long story condensed.
That is so wonderful. Ugh, and my audience knows this about me. I just love when people's businesses are connected to their origin story in such a personal way. And you can literally speak from experience, speak from emotion. I just feel like it truly gives you something special to hold on to in your business whenever your origin story connects in that way. So I loved hearing that. And you are speaking to the right audience, lady. We we need to hear the financial tips, but exactly like you said, not in a way where we're being shamed or yelled at, because money can be a very scary thing, and we can hold just so much shame for getting swept up in things, for not feeling like we know what we're doing or wanting to look at the numbers or anything like that. So, like, I guess what are some of those really simple things that have worked for you and that maybe you teach your people now that can be really helpful when it comes to the money stuff?
Yeah, when it comes to the money stuff, the very first thing is to give yourself a break. I think a lot of times we think we're supposed to know this. We're supposed to have this information. It is not taught in schools. It is not, I mean, unless you're going to like a college course. Like I learned how to write a check in high school. That was it, So financial literacy a lot of times is just our information on it and our education around it is brought down from generation to generation to generation. And that's not always the best information. I mean, I had a mom who was like, you only live once, just as long as you have good credit, you can buy anything. And then I had a dad that's very much in scarcity. And I was somewhere in the middle where I was like, oh, you only live once. And then you get a big bill and start freaking out. And I think we have to remember that we have to seek out the information, and putting our head in the sand and pretending it doesn't exist is going to continue to put us in a bad cycle. So I always tell people, like, give yourself some grace that you don't know this. Like, you're not supposed to know it. Nobody is teaching it unless you seek it out. So that's always my number one thing, because there's so much shame in even reaching out for help. There's so much shame in even saying I don't know how to manage my money. People are more prone to talk about their sex life than they are to talk about their financial situation. And that says something.
Wow, yeah.
That's like, yeah, that says something. So I think number one is to just know that, like, it's okay to not know what you don't know. And it's also okay to learn and find a way to learn it that works for you. I try to very much help my people where they're at, because some people just need to know how to do a budget. Some people just need to, like, actually just feel better about spending, so that is where I always say to start. You got to look at what's going on. Like, you have to just
Mhm.
see what's going on. A lot of times when you sit down and assess your situation, you can go, oh my God. Like, I thought, for me personally, our biggest thing was going out to eat. So we thought we couldn't afford a higher mortgage. We thought we couldn't afford to pay off our debt, but we were spending almost $1,000 a month going out to eat unintentionally. So
Mhm.
sometimes we don't realize that we are putting our money towards things that don't matter as much, and then we're saying that we can't put our money towards the things that do actually matter and the things that we want for our life. So just paying attention. That would be my first two little tidbits.
Oh, yeah. I think that we all need to hear that for
Mhm.
sure, myself included. It is funny. It's so interesting. And I really do think that taking a look at how you grew up and the money story that you've been told and grown up with is so helpful. And then also, yeah, it's so interesting how numbers can be so scary, but it's not necessarily the concrete number.
Yeah.
It's the imaginary idea of the numbers and how scary they could be. And often when you actually take a look at it, it's like just kind of flipping that switch of, oh, this is insight instead of this is says something or means something about you, right? It does have to do with numbers itself, because I feel like this can be applied to social media followings. This
Mhm.
can be applied to the weight on the scale or whatever,
Yep.
right? Like, I feel like if you can flip the switch where it's like, oh, let's see what insights we can take away from this. Let's see what we can glean and learn and how maybe we can use this in different ways. That's always been helpful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the conversations I've been having a lot lately is when somebody is telling me about their debt. I have heard numerous times that they took out loans to go on maternity leave. And I always try to help them, like, take the emotion out of that and be like, what would you have done without that option? Would you have to, like, bring your newborn baby to work with you? Thank that loan, thank that debt to give you
Mhm.
that opportunity. So I think we're shamed so much about our financial situation. And again, I'm very big on dropping the shoulds. And I can
Mhm.
talk about that with money. I could talk about that with my starting messy direction, like all of the things. Like, we've got to let go of the shoulds and really, like, dive into, why we made the decisions that we did. Did they help us in the moment? And it's okay to still want to, like, figure out how to get out of that situation, but we've got to stop shaming ourselves so bad about the past that we can't actually move forward in the future.
Yes. Oh my gosh, lady. Okay, I have to do a quick side tangent.
I love those.
Okay, so we have a sister podcast called Authentic AI, and it's kind of taking Feel Good Social's approach to AI tools. Like, using a human first approach, making them work for you in a way that's aligned with you, not sacrificing your authenticity, but embracing productivity, embracing technology and tools that can help you, right? And I recently interviewed a woman, Dr. Nikki Sweeney out of Australia, and one of her big messages is more women need to be using AI tools. Actually, she was throwing out numbers. She's like 78% of people creating these tools in the AI industry are men.
Yeah.
More men have access to the internet all over the world. Men are 2 times more likely to be using AI tools than women. And the crazy thing is that with these AI tools, literally, you can quadruple the amount of work in your productivity. And if we don't use these tools as women, it really is going to not only increase the income gap for women, but also the way AI tools work is that the users train the tools. So if women aren't using these tools, then we're not being
Right
represented
back to
in the
square one.
future tool.
Yeah.
Right? And okay, so the reason I brought this up is because I asked her, is like, why do you think it is that more men are using these AI tools than women? And of course, it comes back to women aren't as involved in STEM subjects or tech spaces usually. But also, I think is really interesting is that women are more concerned often with authenticity, with the way we show up in the world, and also being viewed as hard workers and deserving of the work that we do,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Because we have to be, because otherwise we could be judged for cutting corners or feeling guilty or using the easy way out, right? Whereas if men use tools like AI tools and stuff, it could be looked at as innovative and productive. But it's really interesting to me, this whole topic of like, can we stop, please, shaming ourselves? Can we stop making it harder for ourselves? We all really need to be embracing the tools that make it easier. We need to be accepting that, yes, sometimes we need to take out loans and do what we need to do in order to live the life we want to live and eventually make more money and different things like that. And it's like, it truly is like all of these like mindset shifts. If we can all talk about this stuff more, it can be so impactful, right?
this is like a perfect example too of how like generations have leaked into the way that we think today. Because I think it was the 70s. It was the first time women were allowed to get loans without their husband co-signing. The
Yeah.
70s. That's
Yeah.
my mom's generation. Like that was not that long ago,
Mm-mm.
So, and then we tie so much of our worth around those things, around what we're doing, around how much money we have, around all of these things. And another thing on this point that I have been thinking a lot about lately is personal development books. How are
Mm-hmm.
they marketed to women? Self-help. How are they marketed
Mm-hmm.
to men? Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? So I think
Right.
as women, we need to figure out how to put ourselves in those space. How can we put ourselves in a better position instead of just being like, my husband will take care of it. I don't need to know that. You know what I mean? And with the AI stuff, it's so interesting to me when people are trying to like put it down because I'm like, do you realize how much more time you could have if you utilize this? Like I
Mm-hmm.
utilize it in so many different ways, editing the podcast, like just so many. I can literally type in something and be like, give me 20 ideas on things I could write about. And it just pops up. And it's so amazing. But people just stop with what they know. And they think that this is just who I am and this is just how I'm supposed to be. And it's like we don't take the time to actually get curious. We just reject things that we don't understand and we accept things that feel good, even if they're full of fear and full of stress, but we're used to hearing them. And I think we just need
Mm-hmm.
to get to the point where no matter what it is, money, AI, whatever we're talking about here, let's just start getting curious about new shit and see what happens.
Yes. I love that our conversations go here because I'm getting fired up. There's so many different things we can talk about with this. I think it could be a really great practice for a lot of us to every time we have some little push or we hear us just become more aware of like the little pushes where you're like, oh, this is hard, or this is giving me anxiety, or I can't do this, or for example, I have one of my cousins. She's always like, I'm not a creative person. I don't have a creative bone in my body, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I'm just like, yes, you do have creativity, but maybe it doesn't show up as like artistic when it comes to painting, or, maybe you don't feel like you're a great writer, but creativity is like so wide and vast and different and shows up in people in different ways. And it's like, anytime you're like, ooh, I'm not a money person, I can't handle this, it's one of those things where it's like, well, what if you could? Like, let's get curious about it, like you said. And slowly our eyes will start to open a little bit and shift more. And like, yeah, you don't have to love it still, but can you do it? Yes.
Yeah. Lately, I have been practicing being bad at something new. I started
Mhm.
teaching myself how to crochet because I decided I'm just in my old lady era at 39. I keep saying 38 and I really think I'm 39. But what I learned in this process, because I was like, oh, crocheting, that seems like it's going to be easy. I just want to do something with my hands and like not be on my phone when I'm relaxing. And what I found is like, wow, this is really difficult. And I had to like start learning how to read the pattern, which is like the beginning before I could even start doing anything. And I made the most craziest looking things. I messed up a million times and I kept telling myself, like, keep going. Because if you can do it with this, you can do it in your business. You can do it with
Mhm.
something new. And so now I can make a whole purse. I
Whoa.
know. But it happens with everything in our lives, and I do think that we
Mhm.
need to practice being bad at something new, because if I just say, "Well, I don't know how to crochet." Well, no crap, I've never tried. And that was exactly what happened in my money story, is we would say, "Well, I'm just bad with money. I'm always gonna be in debt." So I never actually
Mhm.
tried to get out of it. And then when I tried to get out of it, guess what? I got out of it. It took time. I think a lot of times we wanna do something and we wanna do it right away. But we
Mhm.
have to realize that we have to throw the timeline out and we gotta keep working towards it. I truly believe that anything that you hold in your heart, you can hold in your hand if you stick with it. I really truly believe that it can be yours, but you have to stick with it even if it takes 2 years or 5 years, and you have to practice getting uncomfortable. Because a lot of times the moment somebody feels that discomfort, they stop. They don't wanna learn it anymore. I have a lot of family members, they don't like discomfort. So the moment we have a conversation about something they don't understand, they switch the conversation. And it's like, but how do you learn anything new? How do you do anything new? How do you
Mhm.
experience something new? Because I don't know about you, but I get bored if I'm doing the same shit over and over again. So it's an interesting, very interesting conversation.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I will be honest, I don't know what it is about me. It might be that I'm an Enneagram 7 and I just really love the fun stuff, but we need to find each our own way to flip the switch as far as shaming ourselves for not being perfect or like messing up. Because for me, what works honestly is just having fun in the process, being able to laugh at myself in the process and like let go of any shame or embarrassment. I'm not doing this right. It's like I'm having fun doing this. I was laughing because I'm a terrible knitter, let's be honest, but I have knit scarves and I tend to go at things without really having a plan
Oh,
often.
same.
I have 10-foot long scarves I can't wear, and I'm just going, and there's so many different issues. I don't
Yep.
know much about knitting, but they're definitely not perfect. And you can see the flaws in a scarf. And people are like, why don't you just go back and pull out the thread and redo that part? I'm like, no, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to wear this anyway. And I don't really care what it looks like. I'm just like laughing at myself in these little imperfections. And the same can be said, like showing up on Instagram and stuff. I used to be so scared, nervous of myself out there. And I think just like laughing at myself and also maybe having a few friends in a community that can laugh together at those things, that's been helpful for me. Is there anything that's been helpful for you and kind of the messy stuff?
Wow, yeah, I mean, starting messy is like that's like my jam, right? Like, because 'cause I'm a
Hmm.
starter, like, whatever idea I have in my head, I will start the moment I get the idea, whether I have all the information or not, and that obviously leads to a lot of mistakes. I learn through experience, and I think I've
Hmm.
realized that about myself is, like, I could take all the classes in the world, but until I start doing it, I'm not actually gonna learn what I need to learn in the end. So something that I always say to myself is, if I learned something, it wasn't a mistake. If I learned something, it wasn't a failure. And though that's really hard sometimes, especially when I'm one that gets a bit like my expectations get high and then I disappoint myself or something happens that disappoints me. And it can be really hard to remember that in those moments. But I look back at every mistake. The $48,000 in debt was a huge mistake. That was all just buying Lululemon and going out to eat. Like, that wasn't for any reason, you know?
Hmm.
And I think back on it and I'm like, I wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't be able to pick my son up from school, take him to school every morning, work from home. Like I wouldn't be able to do that if I wouldn't have learned those things. And now I manage my money differently because I learned that. So I really try to remember that if there's a lesson in it, it wasn't a mistake. That's probably the biggest
Yeah,
one.
I love that too. Oh my goodness. Okay, so for someone like me who I'm like, I hear ya, I'm pretty okay with our debt at this point, but I'm still like, okay, we're thinking about maybe starting a family. We're like, we need to adult basically in our life, And I'm like, okay, let's start thinking about how we can start implementing healthy financial systems in my husband and I's life. What are some healthy things that we can start doing for our business and personal lives to make sure our finances stay healthy and whatnot?
I mean, paying attention. I know I said that earlier, but like, I think that's the biggest issue that people have is that they just unintentionally do things with their money or they
Mm.
unintentionally make financial decisions and they don't think about the long term. So I think just paying attention and not just paying attention to your balance, but paying attention to where is your money going? Where is it
Mm.
going? Because a lot of times we're just swiping constantly. You walk through Target. I had a client one time that she sends me a message after she does it. So I have a free resource, assess your situation. And she did the assess your situation and she reaches out and she's like, I spent $1,000 a month at Target. She was shocked.
Mhm.
She knew she spent money at
Mhm.
Target, right? But
Mhm.
like she had no idea because $27.40 a day is $10,000 a year.
Wow.
$27. Do you know how easy that is to spend 20? That's a Starbucks and a lunch, you know?
Oh yeah.
And so then people say, well, I can't afford this. I can't afford that. I can't afford this. But we look at the big picture. So I would say to you, stop thinking that under $10 isn't money. We think
Okay, I hear you. I hear you.
well, we think that we have to make this big audacious change. And this doesn't even, this
Mhm.
is outside of money too. This is anything. We think we have to make this big audacious change, make this huge decision, when actually we just have to make tiny little habit shifts every single day, tiny little ones. And when something doesn't go as planned, we don't just throw it all out and burn it to the ground. We go,
Mhm.
oh, yep, shouldn't have done that. Whatever. Let's move on. Let's get back on track. I use a GPS, right? Like if you're in your car and you've got the GPS on and you accidentally take a wrong turn, you don't just stop and stay there forever. You know what I mean? Like you reroute. So I think looking at the tiny stuff, and again, this can be for money, this can be for anything, and being intentional about it. I really think
Mhm.
that intention goes a long way in anything that you're trying to do, especially when it comes to finances. I don't like calling it a budget, I like calling it a spending plan because I want people to be empowered by their spending. So instead of
Mhm.
being like, I have to restrict myself, I can't go and spend $1,000 at Target. Well, when I asked that client, what were you spending it on? And her answer was, I don't remember. There's a big difference than, oh
Yeah.
my God, I bought this amazing blow up pool and we did this whole cool backyard thing. You know what I mean? Like there's a big difference. So being
Mhm.
able to use your money towards the things that actually light you up and enhance your life and make your journey more fun, you know, goes a longer way than just like, I'm going to treat myself today. And then 3 days later, you're like, I don't know why I did that.
Firstly, I think in business, well, and honestly, too, personal life, too, like the subscriptions, I think is where I'm getting, my husband and I are somewhat getting caught up because, especially subscriptions for like Hulu, Netflix,
Netflix,
Max,
just
all the
go back at this point.
and we're always like, okay, we're gonna cancel this one. And then, like, of course, something comes out that we want to watch. But then also in my business, oh my gosh, especially with like the
Subscription.
authentic AI stuff. And now I'm like, tools, tool crazy. And so I'm really trying to set boundaries with that. Another recent thing, too, that I've discovered about myself, I literally, okay, this is kind of embarrassing to admit. And it means that I'm an adult at this point, I think. But I downloaded the Safeway app finally and couponing. Oh my goodness, I'm getting so excited with like the stuff I'm saving. I literally call my mom after every time I go to the grocery store. Mom, I saved $15
Yeah.
today. Or like I made up to $47 has been the most I've saved, but I was so proud of myself.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second because again,
Yeah.
one of the things, so as a money coach, like I don't like literally like do a budget for you. I teach you tools, I teach you like conversations like this, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
example, coupons. So when I was getting out of debt, I like actually used coupons. Now before that, I thought you only use
Mm-hmm.
coupons if you're poor. You only like I had this crazy story that
Yeah.
coupons like meant something about me as a human being, which is
Mhm.
ridiculous because I would save so much money. And now it's so easy. Like the grocery store, you can go
So
right on the
easy.
grocery store app, clip your coupons, and then run your little card and no one even noticed you use them.
Yes.
Because it's like, I don't have to be the
Yes.
person in line that has 75 paper coupons. Like that was where
Yep.
my mind went,
Yep.
but we've, how much have you saved and how long?
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about this real quick. You're the only person I can geek out about this. Oh my gosh. Also, literally last night with my mom, I watched the movie Queen Pins, and it's like about the ladies who did the coupon scam or whatever.
Yep, yep.
But anyway, okay. So yes, and I love that like couponing is so easy these days too because exactly it's an app. You don't have to actually clip them. We really need to let go of that story of like any sort of I think I was holding a shame story too with coupons where you used to have to, they'd scan them. People behind you in line might be getting annoyed or something. Like now, especially, I don't know where you shop, but Safeway makes it so easy. I'm sure every grocery store does. But also in my Safeway app, it counts up like my lifetime savings, right? So I'm up to like $300 in like just a few months, just
Yep.
saving on things that we normally get anyway. And yeah, one time, oh my gosh, I was so excited because someone actually called over a manager because the thing was like stopping me because they're like, I was like, I don't know what's wrong. The self checkout's like not working. And they're like, oh, you're saving too much money, lady. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yay.
Like, flip my hair.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. But anyway, thank you so much for chatting with us about this. Is there anything else that you're feeling called to share with our audience right now?
I think one thing to not accept or deny any idea, whether it's about money, whether it's about anything, is getting curious about new things. Because I really think that all those blocks that we have in our mind is us just trying to block out new information. And that's not fair to us because a lot of the things that we desire or we think other people have that we don't have is our own fault for just like mentally being like, that's not for me. That's not for me. I can never have that. And it's not true. And so the last thing I would say is just get really curious. If it's something you're completely like, oh, absolutely not, ask more questions. Ask more questions because why are you rejecting it so much? Because there's probably something there that needs to be addressed. And it could be the thing, even if you don't want to accept whatever it is, that block could be the thing that's stopping you from getting exactly what it is that you want.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So, thank you for coming on this show. Can you share with us about where people can connect with you, but also your free resources? Because those sound so cool.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram. I live on Instagram. I'm at _ Misty Jane _. The Jane has a Y in it. Everyone forgets the Y. I also have a podcast, the Starting Messy podcast, where I interview entrepreneurs and actually I'm going pretty hard on solo episodes about starting messy. There's also quite a few money conversations in there. You can find that in the link in my bio, or I can send it to you if you put it in show notes. I also have the Starting Messy workbooks, as well as like letting go of your mental blocks and focusing on actions that you need to take to start messy because I'm all about starting messy.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've loved our conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.